Welcome back to yet another installment of the weekly story time with Cruz. A quick reminder, if you have not subscribed to my channel, XOPA, what are you waiting for? Subscribe. This week, our story takes us to the year 2013. Myself and a gentleman from along the East Coast were invited to come out to the state of Louisiana and wrestle for wrestling promotion. Well, this gentleman that I was taking this road trip with, I had only known for 5 months. And in those 5 months, I had put together that this gentleman was, in fact, the biggest, most compulsive liar that I had ever met. So knowing this, I still willingly decided to go along and join him on this trip that we were both invited to come wrestle. Well, we make our arrangements, we rent a car, we head out on the road. Along the way, I am explaining to him that once we get to the state of Louisiana, I want to hit a couple of gyms the 2 days it will be there. So I'm looking on my phone, Googling gyms that will be in that area. Upon this conversation, he tells me that he has been having some curiosities as far as altering his physique, but in the route of anabolic steroids. At this time, this gentleman weighed about 220 pounds. He was only about 5'6" at the most. He was about 5'6", 220 pounds. Not athletic, not in the least conditioned, not in the least bit muscular. I do not fault anyone for looking a certain way, but as professional wrestlers, we are expected to look like professional athletes. But back to the topic. At this time, along the road trip, he's telling me that he has tried this, he's tried that to change and transform his physique. He wants to look more athletic. Well, he says that he has tried everything. He tells me he has tried diets, he has tried workout programs, he has tried trainers, he has tried online supplements, and that he wants to take anabolic steroids. So I give him an insight to how he might approach getting anabolic steroids. I tell him that this is just from what I've seen in gyms that I have been to. I inform him that I have never tried anabolics myself, but I've watched others get them from people within the gyms, bodybuilding community, pro wrestling community even. But I explained to him that he needs to try and work out a very consistent regimen and eating regimen beforehand. So we take our trip to Louisiana, we wrestle and we stay the weekend, and we go to the gym. And I work out with him and I explain to him what he must do on a regular, consistent basis. He does not believe what I am saying because he believes that he has the answer already. He believes that these anabolic steroids are going to be the ultimate answer to his problem. Well, he was a grown man. He was maybe 8 years older than myself. So, he had his right to choose which route he wanted to take as far as his physique. I was simply giving him tips and pointers from my natural point of view. I myself have had experience in the amateur bodybuilding community. I've competed on stage 3 times in my previous years, along with the pro wrestling, and on top of that, I have been exercising and working out since I was 13 years old and hitting weights. So this gentleman, even knowing that, still did not believe that you could attain a admirable physique on just natural ability. So he returns to his home state and he sends me a picture. He sends me a picture on my phone the very next day from when we returned back to our homes. He sends me a picture that he had gone to the store. He had gone to a very popular supplement chain and he was purchasing a bottle of 180 capsules of what he considered anabolic steroids. Upon looking at the picture, I recognized right away where this bottle was purchased and exactly what item it was. For those of you who are unfamiliar with supplements in going to a big market or a supplement store, you cannot purchase anabolic steroids over the counter. There is no such thing in the United States anyway. So I look at these and I'm looking at this picture that he sends me and I recognize that these are 100% overpriced diet pills. And he truly believes he's on this cycle. So he sends me a text replying to my response that I think these are just diet pills. He says, "No, I've looked into it. The guy told me there that he does not sell these to anybody. They keep them there at the store, but they are very expensive and they do not let the public know that they sell these capsules." In my experience going to this chain, I see these all the time. They are clearly on the counter, they're clearly on the walls, they're clearly in the back, they're clearly on displays. These are overpriced diet pills. He paid over $200 for this one bottle. He did not believe me. He chose to take his steroids. And so that is where the fun began. Because upon seeing him the following week at a wrestling show, I run into him backstage and I ask him if he was taking the pills. And he looks at me and he is just very intense. He walks in with his bag in the locker room. He's dragging his bag and he has this look on his face. He's so intense. He does not even want to acknowledge anyone. He's just staring. And he's walking in like if he's this military guard carrying gold bars in his bag or something. He completely dismisses others that are in there. But he cannot help but try to let everyone know that he is different somehow. So we get to putting a match together. And during the course of this match, he and I are sitting in an office that has been closed off from the rest of the locker room. And we're sitting in this office and we're putting a match together. And we're explaining things that we want to go through and things that we are okay with doing in the match. And you get a knock on the door. There is a knock. Door knocks and someone asks if they can come in. He looks and he just, before I can reply, he just looks at the door and he yells, "Go away." So this person knocks again. "Hi, can I come in? I need to grab my bag." So this gentleman looks again at the door and he yells, "Go away." So he yells again, second time, "Go away." Upon the third knock, by this point, here's, "I just need to grab my bag. Let me in." He gets up out of his chair and he grabs his can of Monster. And the door is closed, so nobody can see him but me. And he grabs his can of Monster. And he sips it and then he crushes it. Very, very slow motion. And then he whispers under his breath, "I said go away." And then he yells at the door, "Go away! We're putting a match together. Go away!" He's yelling at the door at this point. So he's yelling at the door. At this point I look and I see that he has the vial, or the bottle of pills on the desk. I grab it and I ask him, I said, "How many of these have you taken today?" And he says, "I've only taken 4. it says I need to take 4 a day. I take 2 breakfast and 2 before bed. And so I look, and again, these are diet pills, but they are in a weird dosing that you must take 2 in the morning upon waking up, and then 2 before you go to sleep. That is how you would take most testosterone boosting supplements, but these are clearly thermogenics to make you sweat, make your body heat up, curb your appetite, and give you a hit of caffeine, which caffeine was very high on the content in this bottle. So I look at it, I tell him, maybe you need to lay off. These are very high in caffeine, and you have you eaten today? And he looks at me and becomes enraged. And he grabs his hair and he starts pacing across the locker room. Fuck! I haven't eaten anything today. I haven't eaten. Fuck! How much time do we have? So he looks at me as if I'm just his timekeeper, and he's just demanding that I have the time. I tell him my phone is in my bag outside. He gets mad. He gets his monster can and he throws it against the wall. He throws it against the wall for no reason at all, other than he in his head truly believes that he was taking anabolic steroids. We walk out of the office. I am in my wrestling gear. The first thing I see after I get out of the office is this man who has already thrown his monster across the room, was already crushed it before that, and is already upset that he has not eaten. He storms out and he yells that he's going to come back. Well, I go to the ring area. I'm walking towards the wrestling ring. I'm helping set up chair. 40 minutes later, this gentleman returns, and we just hear tires screeching through the parking lot. He walks in carrying this bag of Arby's, and he's just stuffing food in his face. Already, he believes he's on steroids. He believes he's on roid rage, and he's eating junk food. I'm walking up the ramp, the entrance ramp, to go into the outside of the locker room, and I hear yelling and screaming going on. As I hurry through the curtain, I look through and I see him there. He had thrown his Arby's bag on the floor, and it looks as if it had been stepped on, as if he had just completely thrown it on the floor and squashed it in anger. So I see him in the face of a wrestling announcer that was part of the show, and he's yelling and screaming in the face of this announcer. He's yelling about being disrespected, and I question what is going on. Well, this gentleman on steroids turns around and he starts cutting a promo, yelling and saying, I bust my back in this business for 18 years, and people still think they can run around and disrespect me and say whatever they want. I'm watching this gentleman still go through his roid rage. His imagination is just running wild. He's already stepped on his food. Then he picks up his Arby's bag and he grabs it and he scuffles through and he pulls out his Arby's roast beef sandwich, the worst thing on the menu. He grabs his roast beef sandwich and he's biting it like a savage. And he's eating, and he's pointing his finger and he's poking this announcer's chest. And the announcer has had enough of this already, and he says, don't do it, don't do it. You don't put your hands on me. And then he takes a big bite of his Arby's, and he's still poking him in the chest. And the announcer says, quit putting your hands on me. You're not going to put your hands on me. The gentleman gets his Arby's, and he throws it back on the floor, and he acts like he's going to take a punch, throw a punch at him. This skinny little referee that we had in training at that time, he was about 15 years old. He weighed 100 pounds at most. He was very small and tiny, very underdeveloped. He jumps out and he hugs this man around the waist while he's got his arm back. Well, as this individual is trying to portray that he's on roid rage, he starts kicking and screaming. And he's actually pretending that this 100-pound 15-year-old whose arm around the waist is holding him back. And myself and two others that were in the locker room observing began to kind of laugh because it doesn't make sense. Especially for him, believing he's on steroids, he still has not any power to fight off this 15-year-old who's hugging him around the waist. All the while, the wrestling announcer, who knows that this is bullshit, realizes that he knew this weren't steroids because he and I were friends and we had been talking about that prior. Well, he's not afraid that this man is in his face and poking him, but he's pissed, no less. But he sees that a 15-year-old is holding him back, and if a 15-year-old is holding you back and you're on quote-unquote steroids, you must be very, 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 very weak, or you are putting on a show. So he starts to scream and he's kicking. Well, there's a championship belt on the couch. While he's kicking and screaming, he reaches for the championship belt and he grabs it in perfect pro wrestling fashion. He grabs the belt and he looks at it, almost as if there was a crowd watching and this was WWE Raw. He looks at the belt and he pretends to walk away, and then he lunges at him and tries to run and hit this wrestling announcer with the belt. It is the most ridiculous thing I have witnessed in a locker room to this day. He runs at him, and all the announcer does is step out of the way. And this gentleman who is on fake steroids, put on a show, stepped on his foot, threw his monster, who has the belt, he swings the belt, and he hits the wall. And then he's selling as if he broke his fingers because he hit the wall. So then he's selling his fingers. Again, in his mind, I truly believe he thinks that a crowd was watching him. Which there was. There was three of us. On top of the announcer who he was just completely harassing, and the 15-year-old referee. So then he's hopping around and he's wringing out his fingers in a very dramatic fashion. He did not crush his fingers. He never intended to hit him with the belt. And he was never on steroids. He just wanted to portray that he was going to roid rage and that his $200 was at least justified by what he was going through and how it was torturing him. So the promoter walks in and we have to explain all of this. Then the real fun begins, because upon explaining to it, he wants to reenact it. So he actually goes and runs across the locker room and gets in the announcer's face again. Not as a joke, but he truly believes he's so enraged and embarrassed that everybody there was laughing at him. He yells in his face. He says, "Meet me outside. Meet me outside if you're so bad." So then he calls him out, and he's spacing, and he walks out to the parking lot. And he's there waiting, and he's warming up his arms. He's throwing punches in the air as if he's a boxer getting ready for a fight. The announcer follows him out there. He follows him out to the parking lot. I follow, and I let him know. I said, he's putting on a bigger show. He's not even going to touch you. If you just stand there, he won't hit you. So my good friend of this announcer, he knows nothing is going to happen, and he knows that this guy is full of shit. So he walks out into the parking lot, and again, in typical WWE fashion, this guy runs across the parking lot where there is the most people standing, and he dives on top of the group of people. He made it to where the announcer stood here and people were gathered beside a truck right along this side. So I'm the announcer. There were about 6 people standing by a truck, and this idiot runs across the parking lot. He jumps using the tailgate of the truck, and he dives on people, as if he's trying to lunge, like if he was Undertaker or something like that. It was the most ridiculous thing I have seen, again, to this day, in backstage at a wrestling show. So, moral of the story. Yes, he was at home that day. He was at home. He was not allowed to wrestle. He had to take his bag, and he literally drove away in his wrestling gear. He drove away in his truck. And he eventually calmed down. The promoter made him give away the steroids. He supposedly gave them away to a friend of his. But again, this gentleman was such a compulsive liar that he believed in his head that he even was living out roid rage. And that was not the case. He just purchased overpriced fat burners, made a fool of himself, and tried his hardest to convince everyone at the wrestling promotion that he was on anabolic steroids. So, then remember, if you are going to go the anabolic route, always, at very least, make sure you are on 100% real steroids. Que chucha, stay classy.